I'm still ill. I'll always be ill. I'll die, a sick person. Health is a crown that only the ill can see. Everyone who doesn't have a disability, it's just pre-disabled. You will lose your eyesight, lose the ability to walk. It's like you live long enough, everything will be taken from you.
What do you do when your body stops being reliable? When the plans you had no longer fit the reality you're living? Today's guest, Dr. Jeff Boone, has spent decades helping people navigate chronic illness and chronic pain. Then life handed him a very different challenge where he spent time on the other side of the desk experiencing chronic pain and illness. And now he's helped thousands of people work through this very reality in their life. Today, we're talking about resilience, meaning, and how to thrive when life doesn't go according to your plan. Welcome to the SwagAbility Show. My name is Steve Wagstaff, and I founded SwagAbility. Our desire is to share stories that become light in dark places and to show you that you still have purpose. Our goal at SwagAbility is to see all individuals thriving no matter where life finds them. Dr. Jeff, I appreciate you meeting with me and taking time to come on to the show today. You've got a rich wealth of knowledge in this area of chronic pain and dealing with chronic illness. I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Well, thank you very much for having me today. Thank you for hosting me. I appreciate it. I look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, we've had a great pre-interview and so many things in common, but two different lives. But I think it's gonna be a great conversation. Before um, I was going to read a list of things you've accomplished, which are numerous
Oh,
books. And
I've been there, done that.
right.
I've
Right.
taken some classes, passed some classes,
Yes.
and I've worked with lots of clients,
Yes.
throughout the decades. But at the end of the day, I'm just some guy. I'm some guy that, it's kind of like it's not about the letters at the end of my name. It's about the humanity of who I am and how I've assisted, myself and others through the navigation of the chronic illness experience,
The
which
very
can be existentially devastating.
it is. Yeah. And knowing that there's no need to put classes, books, read, names. So I appreciate that about you. It was your humility that I was drawn to when we first met. But when you look back, like our life values start to get ingrained into us as young people, really. And I'm just
Yes.
wondering if you're comfortable with sharing enough. What did home look like before professional career comes along? Those early values that shaped maybe later on the man who you become and then been able to help so many people. Did your grounding get a start in your early years before you decided what career path you were going on? I always love the start stories. And some
Yeah,
are
the start was, quiet and calm. The parents were solid. There was no trauma of the past in any particular way. There was always emphasis on trying the best you possibly can, getting a good education, going to college and graduate degrees. And that was always kind of encouraged. What was kind of unique with me in terms of a story was I was always an anxious person. I was an anxious kid. That's just the wiring of just what it was, just the genetics of who I was. There was no like moment, where I had this terrible thing and this traumatic thing. Psychology always wants to do that. It wants to go
yes,
like, oh, here it is. This was the
your
moment.
childhood. Yeah,
Yes, and sometimes in meandering through all of that history, as if you can possibly pick out this one event that
amen
would
to that.
explain everything.
Yeah,
And usually it is just this genetic, this biology. It is just this predisposition to have a particular personality. And for me, it's, because I've done the brain scans, I have an overactive basal ganglia, which is, part of the limbic system within the brain. And so I'm just kind of more of a anxious person. And it probably would have served the tribe a long time ago, in terms of my ancestors, to kind of have someone that was more alert and scanning for danger, but not so good when you are getting up in front of the class and giving presentations and getting really, really anxious.
Yeah, and I mean, uh, me our medical systems, our diagnoses, they've come so far, even 5 years ago, but we're thinking 20 years ago, we probably all, like, I don't I'm 48, going 49 next week. I mean, I think of how many different diagnoses could I have probably had slapped on me as a kid,
Yes.
if these things existed back then, because I mean, I was an oversensitive kid, like, got you know, as a redhead, got picked on my early years of school and then, learned to hide it really well and became, used to class clown, but to make up for those areas where I felt like I was so vulnerable in those areas. But again, no major event. It was just my DNA hardwiring. And
Yes,
I think
absolutely.
so. I think those things, um, I think even what they call weaknesses, I think used in a proper way can actually become a strength and a platform, even whatever age it is, to work with someone else to make their day better. Um,
Yes.
I think that's true for all of us. Your thoughts?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I've had in my life periods of depression, periods of anxiety, and all of that has, made it so much easier to talk to people who are going through tough times. People will tell me, it's like, oh, isn't it like depressing to talk to, people that are going through tough times all the time? Like, absolutely not. These are my people. And this is my tribe.
Yeah.
I have the utmost patience, for people going through whatever experience that they're going through, and it's never been a heavy weight on me. It's never been tedious or difficult. It's always been interesting, and part of that is just my own imperfections, my own falling downs, so to speak, my own embarrassments, my own shame, whatever it is. I'm not a perfect person. I'll never be a perfect person. And so
Not
that
on
makes
this
it
side of
even.
eternity.
What's that?
Not on this side of eternity, but the other
Not on
side.
this side of eternity. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. And so,
Yeah. Um, what was I gonna say from that? Take us through, getting into your college years. Did you develop an empathy for individuals, and you knew that was you're going to be your life's calling to, uh, yes, to get an education, but direct it towards people that who society says the down and outers, the ones that
yes.
are dealing with issues that, never seem to be able to get going in life. I mean, th let's face it, like, there's a need to minister, to support individuals that
Yes.
these are very real cases. So,
Yes.
I don't know if they have classes in university, I didn't go, that deal with this type of thing, or just what did education look like in order to get you to where you are
I thought
today?
for me, the empathy was always there. I was one that was kind of allergic to bullying,
Amen.
elementary school, middle school, high school. I wouldn't participate. I would try to stop it. I could always just see the ludicrous nature of bullying or excluding people. I'm always a big believer of that quote, life is a group project. And Ram Dass says, we're all just walking each other home. And so I could always feel that life should be this collective process, and we don't need to put anyone else down to be able for us to kind of rise up or to be significant, to be valuable, to be worthy. So that was always just kind of a part of my DNA. And then when you get to college, so the very first psychology class that I ever took was in high school. And that was where it was junior year, it was an elective. And that's where I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I would like to go to, college and learn more. And a lot of it was kind of tedious. And because you're not really working with anyone, you're not really talking to anyone, you're reading these books. And probably the only interesting one was multiculturalist psychology was interesting and abnormal psychology. But, learning about, conditioning and social sciences and some of these other things, it just didn't seem very relatable in terms of how am I going to leverage this information to be able to improve somebody else's life. And so you have this big, broad history lesson of, oh, this is Freud, this is Jung, this is Albert Bandura, whoever it may be. And this is, psychodynamic theory, this theory, this is that theory. But it really wasn't kind of hands-on in any kind of way. And I liked volunteering much more because you would just find ways of being able to interact with other humans. Because at the end of the day, that's all that I'm seeking to do with my life, which is interact with other humans that may be, stressed, suffering in difficult circumstances, whatever it may be. And so the textbooks, the classroom, it was a little dry, when it comes down to it. But I had faith that it would get a little bit more interesting. And it did once I got to graduate school and I could actually start talking to people.
Yeah. I think that's the component that education misses is, yeah, I agree. We've got to get the quote unquote book smarts, but until you start dealing with people, you you don't really know how to develop your rapport
Yes.
to fix when you don't know yourself. And so I think life is the greatest teacher. Um,
Absolutely. Without a doubt, the clients that I've talked to throughout all the decades, thousands of clients, and those have been my greatest teachers. Not the books, not the classrooms, not the teachers. They gave me information, but most of it really wasn't. Mostly what I learned was what I read after the fact, after graduate school. It provided a foundation to be able to better understand, but being able to understand humanism, being able to understand existential philosophy, those things, those components, that was really what kind of ultimately made a difference. But it wasn't the classroom.
so we've talked about decades because literally thousands of people you've worked with and helping them move forward in life and be able to live a life of well, what we say thrive, enjoy. Uh, Give us a scope of I want to say cases, but dealings with so illnesses, idiosyncrasies people have, different dispositions
It
people go towards. What's
Well, it was
the scope
mostly
of people?
medical. It was
Yes,
mostly medical ailments.
and was
You
it
see a lot of people with
anxiety?
what's that?
Was it like it wasn't, we can exclude, like, physical you're not looking for knee pain, you're dealing with people that are struggling with, um, mental health, anxiety, depression, those type of things. I'm just trying to figure out the scope of the people you've dealt with over 20 years, um,
Yes.
just to kinda narrow in what we can talk about more.
Yeah, no, throughout those years, it was anxiety, depression, it was, PTSD, things
Okay.
of kind of that nature. It was
Yep.
the mood disorders
Yes.
and not the personality disorders. And I'm not a real big fan of personality disorders, but it was really much more of the mood spectrum.
Gotcha.
And at the end of the day, I always found it fascinating that most people, like they were diagnosed with say depression. They weren't really, really depressed. I've seen really, really depressed people. Just like I've only seen one person in all those years that probably had during when I was actually speaking to them 10 out of 10 pain all those years. And I specialized in, chronic pain. And I would very rarely see people that were actually incredibly depressed. And after, talking to a few that absolutely were, it's like, oh, okay, if this is really, really depressed, other people, okay, what they're dealing with is grief, sadness, feeling demoralized, maybe feeling hopeless and helpless. But much more within the subclinical range. Most of my work at the end of the day with most clients, most of them would fall into that kind of walking wounded subclinical range of not depression, but sadness, not the clinical anxiety, but kind of like the worried, the worry, the concern, feeling unsafe in their body, things of that nature. And that's just that's what it was. Sure, I would see people with panic attacks and they would have panic attacks in front of me and they would have anxiety and whatnot. But the majority of people really kind of fall into the subclinical element.
I agree with that. There is a difference. I had a father that was hospitalized with a guard on his room for suicidal tendencies, and he came after a cancer. He had leukemia, and then all the anti-rejection drugs just caused
Yes.
a massive imbalance in his brain, and he went from this stoic leader and pastor in our church to a man I didn't recognize, and so I recognize there's a difference between those clinical depression and then those that are dealing. And I will say this though, everyone's experiences are are valid no matter what
Yes.
level. We don't elevate their depression above that
Mhm.
person right
Suffering,
now.
suffering.
It is, and that's, I think, the best way to say it. We've used the term, existential a couple times, and so what do you mean when you say chronic illness is an existential experience? Because I think that's a it's a that's a $10 word at the end of the day, or what in this day, it's $100 word, but, let's break down meanings for a little bit so people maybe have a better
Well, when
understanding.
I think of the existential, existence and, the pillars that I think of are 4. We talk about freedom and how it either increases, decreases, or what exactly does someone perceive to be the freedoms that they have within life. And so freedom is first and foremost, which is where's your self efficacy? Where is your control? What are the choices that you can make? And how are you defining your world based on those freedoms?
Yes.
The second one would be isolation versus community. Are you isolated? Are you alone? Do you have contact with others? Do you have a social support? Do you have community? Are you just receiving from the community or are you able to give back to the community? What is your relationship with the community if you have one at all? So isolation is huge. And then the grand, brushstroke at the end would be death, which is what is your relationship to death? There's a lot of anxiety, a lot of worry, a lot of negative rumination is built up around the death anxiety, the death concerns. And so what is your relationship to death? And lastly, it is what is the meaning that you put on this life? What is it that you see, in terms of what you're getting up for the day? I am this person and I do these things for this reason. And so it is freedom, isolation, death, and meaning in terms of the lenses in which we look at life.
As a pastor, I think you spoke, uh, those I think this falls into the exact same category because I would always challenge people, no matter how they were feeling, was to figure out, or come to some sort of conclusion in their life, and basically 3 or 4 things. Number 1, how did I get here? Number
Yes.
2, what is my purpose? 3, yeah, 3, what do I do with, the person of Christ, Jesus Christ? And 4, where am I going when I die? I mean, to me, those probably fit any one of those pillars because I found that, inside the church and, now being on the outside, not that I'm no longer a believer, but
Yes.
dealing with people that are not church, I find that, it's shamed inside the church if you have anything it's better than it was, but mental illness, treating mental illness and things like that, um, it's sad to say is because if people are supposedly spiritual people, they don't have issues. So,
Yes.
but the statistics are very, very similar, whether one calls themselves religious or one calls themselves a non-believer.
Yes.
So it's a feeling that are in both camps, and
Yes.
it shouldn't be two camps. It's one existential humanity. So,
A
um,
absolutely.
yeah, so you're in it for roughly 20 years listening to people and, dealing with them, uh, not working because, um, I would say if you're doing something you absolutely love, you're not working a day in your life. So to
Yes.
me, it sounds like you love what you did, uh,
Yes.
and then at the end of the day, you run into the fact that what you've been treating your clients with, all of a sudden, you're found yourself in the chair on the other side of the desk because, I
Absolutely.
can't even pronounce I was trying to pronounce it pre-interview of the diagnoses that you end up with in life and find yourself now dealing in a very real way with what many of your patients were. Can you tell us a little bit about that if that's not too personal?
No, happy to. And so, about a decade ago, I was working in my office and developed this horrible headache that just wouldn't resolve. I ended up going to an ear, nose, and throat doctor, and he prescribed prednisone, which is pretty normal. Take some, for sinusitis. And so that was the diagnosis. I had a CT scan. So my sinuses were all kinds of messed up. Now, the problem is I take this prednisone and my body flips out. My feet start to vibrate. My bladder hurts. I have a tremor. My memory is wiped. I have this horrible fatigue. I have all these other symptoms, strange symptoms all over the place, and don't fit into like the decision tree. And, for any of the doctors, because I go to the neurologist, the urologist, I go to the podiatrist, I go to the internist, I go to all these different doctors, and I just look like a mess to them. And so, because I have these symptoms that don't fall into the decision tree, and the usual blood work shows that I look fine,
Yeah.
but I'm not fine. And so, and I don't know what's going on. And I'm just running around throwing money at people to try to figure out like what is wrong with me, help me out. And I ended up going to a functional medicine doctor. He does particular blood work, and says, "You know what? I think you have a mold illness. I think you have mold. You should go look in your house, in your office." And so that's what I did. And lo and behold, there was Stachybotrys in the HVAC of my office. There was other neurotoxic mold in there as well. And I end up with the diagnosis of chronic inflammatory response syndrome. So, roughly about a quarter of the population has a particular gene that makes it hard for them to excrete essentially the mycotoxins. And so instead, they just recirculate it and they just stay inflamed. And that's exactly kind of what happened to me. And then I start down the path of trying to treat it for
Yes. You still with me?
yes, no,
Oh,
no, no.
sorry.
I thought, did you have a question?
No, I thought the sound cut for a second.
Oh, no,
What
no,
does
no,
it
no.
look like symptomatically? What are you dealing with because of, this toxicity coming from the mold? How does
Memory
it
impairments,
memory
I
impairment?
can't look at a TV because the light it's like I had a concussion, and someone can't scroll on the TV because it makes me nauseous. The movement of the TV, the movement, or like seeing Christmas lights, it was just nauseating, too much stimulation. I couldn't even, like, look at my cell phone, and I would end up just reading books. I wouldn't remember the books because my memory was so bad, but I needed a place to escape to. I had horrible, horrible insomnia. And that was a whole journey because I ended up doing these sleep studies, and they didn't help at all. But I ended up kind of doing some cortisol testing, and it showed I had just had outrageous levels of cortisol and which I then take certain supplements to be able to kind of help partially regulate. But I'm bouncing all over the place. And then after about a year of treating, the chronic inflammatory response syndrome due to the biotoxin of the mold, I end up going like, you know what? I still don't have good days. I'm still ill. So I say, you know what? I'm going to go to the Mayo Clinic. But before I go, I'm going to look up, the local hospital and I'm gonna look at the directory. I'm gonna see if there are there any other, types of doctors that I haven't seen that could be helpful. And I see toxicology. I'm like, I don't know what toxicology even does, but you know what? I feel toxic. So, and that's really the only reason I went. And I go, and it's this older gentleman. He doesn't believe anything about the mold. He's like, I know about those people. I don't believe it. And it's like, I don't really care. Just, is there anything that you can do to help me? It's like, I'm not well. And he believed me. He listened to me, and he ends up, testing my immunoglobulins, and my immunoglobulins are all clinically low. And so that's a problem. That's part of your immune system. And so then he refers me to the immunologist. The immunologist gives me a vaccine. And a month later, I get my blood red. And lo and behold, I did not make antibodies to that vaccine. And so what does that mean? It means I have low immunoglobulins and my body's not making antibodies. So I end up with the diagnosis of common variable immune deficiency.
And
And
that
for that,
causes sorry, I just wanna see, and the is it nauseousness? Is it the inability, so it's causing sleep issues, which would cause mood
sleep issues,
problems,
memory issues, brain issues,
nausea,
my ears turn red, I have a tremor,
yes. Physical
I'm
pain?
depressed, low mood,
Yes.
my feet are vibrating, my head hurts, my foot hurts, it's kind of nerve pain. I still have nerve pain in my foot and,
Just
most of
wanted
the time in my head.
to list those, so if anyone's listening going, "Well, I've never had a diagnosis, but that guy's hitting the symptoms that I'm experiencing," so I just wanted to thanks for sharing that just to someone else to be like,
Sure,
picking up
yeah.
on symptoms and never have ever heard the term or would never even think to go down that road, so I thank you. I think that's really important
I
symptomatic
say
and
all
why
the time, it's like, have you gone to an immunologist? It's like, get it ruled out. A lot of people, I'm surprised by because I would tell the doctors because the doctors really want to focus on a narrow basis. Like let's just look at your bladder. Let's just look at this one aspect, this one piece. Okay, sleep. We need a sleep study, and I'm telling everyone it's systemic. It's throughout my entire body. It's not just one body part. And I keep on saying it's systemic, it's systemic. And now I know it's kind of like, oh, you should go to a rheumatologist, you should go to an immunologist because they're going to do blood work that the others aren't going to do. The others are just going to go like, how's your white blood cell count? How are your kidneys, your liver, whatnot.
did the doctors, did you find, a good amount of them were looking to treat the symptoms as opposed to the cause, because that's a
Yes.
issue in medicine today is let's
Everyone is
treat
going to
the
look
symptom.
at based on like what is available in terms of what they prescribe.
Yes,
And so it's kind of like I go to the urologist, I have this bladder pain, and they're like, okay, we can scope the bladder. So we did that. That's a little bit of an existential ego death, getting your bladder scoped.
in there.
Most men don't have to go through that.
No.
And he just threw some Flomax at me, which was just, and
Yeah,
it's just kind of, and so he was just looking at me through his
yeah,
prescription pad. He's like,
yeah.
"Well, I prescribe this, so I can just give this to you." And I remember telling him, it's like, I'm like, "That's fine, I'll try it." But at the end of the day, I'm like, "Dude, this is systemic. This is my whole body. This is not just my bladder." And he's like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. I just treat the bladder." And
Because you
it's just like
end
it
up
was
with a
so
whole bunch
disheartening.
you would end up with a whole bunch of because of the in their well-meaning, trying to help the symptom, prescribe that, but if you're on that hunt to figure out, "I've gotta rule this out," and you take everything that each doctor gives you. I had a grandmother like that. I mean, not that you are, anywhere near this, but if that didn't get treated, if she wanted to hunt down why she wasn't feeling well, but at the end of the day, trying to wean her off of probably
Sure.
40 different medications
Absolutely.
became life's greatest problem, and, I mean, it took some time, but, um so, yeah, I agree that it's not treating the symptom, it's being dogged that you know your body best, and
Mhm.
this isn't working, so don't settle for it. Uh, I would say I would move through life trying to find an answer until
Yes.
there wasn't one to be found, and then I
Yes.
turned to, "How do I now live with this?" C5
Yes.
quad, spinal cord injury, not gonna not gonna heal itself miraculously and without help. So now how do we manage symptoms? But I would say to anyone, dogged determination to figure out why you're not feeling well, uh,
100%.
is the best. Like, just if you don't do it for yourself, the Medicare systems in both countries aren't going to
Yes.
just say, "Well, I'm gonna call you in just because I've got some time to look into this." I say, be determined. Yeah, how did let me ask you this. How did you, or how do we, I guess, rebuild meaning when the future we expected completely disappears?
Well, for me, it started with lots of tears. It started with grief. It started with sadness. And that grief, that sadness, those tears, it was the process of being able to let go of
Yes.
the past self. You have to, because people do this all the time. They judge today. The rules for today are rules that were established 10 years ago when they were healthy, when things were going well. And if you do that, every day is going to be a failure. Every day is going to suck
Yes.
because you have to have the rules and expectations for the day based on what you possess today, not what you possessed a decade ago. So you have to be able to grieve, to be able to let go. Now, the tricky thing with grief, especially with chronic illness, is that grief will be a boomerang. You are not going to grieve it, set it down, and you will not revisit it. Grief is going to be revisited on a regular basis. And if you are, working on the grief, it becomes an easier experience, but it's still always going to be an experience.
Think that's a problem too in society is, for some reason, grieving is seen as a weakness, especially among men. Um, my wife's trying to teach that to me now. We lost my service dog got run over,
Oh,
terribly
okay.
hurt by it, grieving
Sure.
it. But my idea of grief is where she wants to reminisce over pictures and that, and
Yes.
don't show me, like, ignore,
Hmm.
work, whatever. But that's probably part of the reason I was telling you I ended up in hospital the other
Yes.
day, because it's an unhealthy way to do things. So I think normalizing grief is a great statement because,
Yes.
yeah, and I used to hate the term, and I thought it was developed during COVID, a new normal. But I think the
Yes.
reality is we have to deal with a new normal generationally as we move through life, because the only certain thing we have in life is change.
Yes.
It's
Absolutely.
coming whether we want it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah, how did your clients take that? And let me roll it back a little bit more. How would you help a client refocus the fact that grieving is okay and maybe we need to manage that grief in such a way as you're gonna explain now?
Well, I mean, to start off with, in terms of the most basic way, it's that, sunlight is the best disinfectant. So how do you bring it into your conscious mind? How do you allow it to sit with you? And there's countless ways. I mean, it's like you could just talk to a friend about it. It's just like talk to a partner, a spouse about it. You could just, get some paper and write about it for 10 minutes a day. You're bringing it into your conscious awareness. You don't have to just kind of stay on it every single moment of the day, but at the same time, giving, a dedicated portion of your day to just being able to acknowledge it. And it's like just shedding skin. It's like a snake shedding skin. It's outgrowing its old body because the rules have changed. But it's not the end of the snake to shed the skin. It's now the new normal. It is the chrysalis on, onto the butterfly. And it's the evolution. And, if you look around the world, and I'm just giving you kind of two examples here, it's kind of like the leaves falling off the tree. Give it some time, the leaves will come back. It's gonna, the shedding the skin, the transition to from the chrysalis to the butterfly. There is so much knowledge in the nature, that we're surrounded by. We just have to pay attention to it and to say, If the trees can let go of things, such as their leaves, I can let go of things to allow something to come in the future, to allow a new growth to occur.
Yeah, that's that's so that's such a good analogy, and it's such truth. Like, I think we're so blind to so many examples God brings into our life. You mentioned friend, talking to a friend about it, and I think that's great, and family's great to do that too. And I think there's probably people are welcoming to that. But what happens when friends and family don't understand what you're carrying with chronic illness, with things that are the unseen, but yet still ruin life? It's still an illness. When you're not well, you're not
Yes.
well, and you go through every day just trying to put one foot in front of the other. And when friends and family don't understand it, what do you what do you say to that as a, as a professional in this business?
One, you ask for help. You ask communities. You may ask your church. You may be a part of a church group. You could be part of a small, study group for the Bible, and that you ask for help. And you ask everybody. You could ask, there are particular people that could be therapists, coaches, mentors in terms of the illness. There are advocacy groups in terms of whatever it is that you're going through, that you're not alone, that there are online forums that exist as well. And you try to reach out to all of them. And there is no one perfect path. Oh, go talk to this person, go do this thing. But you kind of ask the world. And I remember in college, this is one of my weaknesses, was that I didn't ask for help. I didn't go to office hours. There was a writing center on the campus, and I was too embarrassed because I was such a bad writer that I was too embarrassed to go to the writing center and ask for, when they know that I'm a bad writer, and they have something there for me, but I didn't ask for help. And at the end of the day, it's kind of like you don't know where the help is going to come from. Is it a therapist, a coach, a mentor? Is it an advocacy group? Is it an online group, who are individuals that are going through the same thing that you can talk to? I don't know where it's going to come from. And so you ask everybody in all facets, please, is there anything that you could do? Do you know anyone who would be beneficial for me to connect with?
I think that's the beauty of, as much as there's darkness online, and people
Yes.
can find that and get absorbed into it, I don't think in this day and age, I know this is a bold statement, but it's coming from someone, a quadriplegic, does deal with mental health, varies at time, but we don't I don't think we have a pass or an excuse anymore to say nobody gets it, because there
Yes.
are people that get it. It's how determined you are to find that group, that
Sure.
family, that body, that and because I don't think there's any illness, chronic illness, pain, whatever, maybe a bold statement, that someone else hasn't or isn't dealing with some sort of that
Yes,
that
absolutely.
could relate to you. True?
Yes, absolutely. I know for myself, if I walk out my door and I go up and down, knock on all the neighbors' doors, I'm probably not going to find anyone with common variable immune deficiency or someone with a primary immune disorder. But if I type it in to some of my social media,
Yes,
lo and behold, here are a bunch of people with common variable immune deficiency.
yes,
And it's kind of like, and there are doctors with it, there are therapists with it, it's kind of like, and there are people that are absolutely positively understanding,
yes.
with this illness.
How do you think the definition of resilience has changed over the years? Because I think that's what we all strive for. I think for the most part, deep down, we really want to be those resilient people. But do you think the definition has changed over years?
I think the definition is the same, but I think we are in this fast-paced culture of instant gratification that, the patience for it to come about has changed.
That's a great point.
Like, what is resilience? It's like fall down 7 times, get up 8. That's resilience. It is the continuation of an effort, even when there has been failures, even when you haven't received the results. And so our fried dopamine brains, from all the scrolling and all the instant gratification
Yeah.
has just left us in a place where wow, if I don't get better today, this week, it's kind of like then there's no hope for me. There's no chance for me. Why even try to get up again? And, I know for myself, it's kind of like dealing with some incredibly difficult symptoms for years has most definitely enabled me to become, resilient because, I had to keep going when there was no path forward. There was only suffering, but I believed that I had faith that there would be something out there, and there was something out there. There
Yeah.
absolutely was, and but it was very difficult.
Yeah. That's really profound. I'm still trying to gather, but I would ask this then, maybe how do we stop fighting reality without giving up hope when it comes to these issues that we're trying to either live with or find an answer to, but there is at the end of the day, there's going to be a reality of
Sure,
it is
absolutely.
what it is. I
Mhm.
always say that it is what it is, without giving up hope. I mean, I know how
Yeah,
I would deal with it, but I'd like to ask you that same question. How would you answer that?
I like the image of the yin and the yang, and so you have the white swirl with the black dot, the black swirl, with the what's it? It's the white swirl with the black dot, and the black swirl with the white dot, and it's that balance because it's not an either or. It's like, like I'm still ill. I'll always be ill. I'll die, a sick person. And because I'll never be cured from a primary immune disorder. And I have pain and I have fatigue and I have some, other symptoms. And those things are not going to fundamentally change significantly for me. And that would be kind of like the black swirl,
Yes.
but within that same life, I have the ability to write books, do a podcast, be on a podcast, talk to people, go out to dinner with my family, go out and, visit with my parents. I'm able to, go out and take a walk, listen to music, do all these things. And that would be that white, swirl. And going back to what I was saying with the existential thought, that white swirl would represent that freedom that it's kind of like I need to be aware of where I'm free because there are places where I am not free. I am not free to, not have an immune disorder. And it's kind of like, but you don't want to just stare at it.
Mhm.
You don't want to get overly consumed. Now, we can always acknowledge it. We can always grieve it. We can always cry about it. We can always talk about it. It's like we're not trying to ignore it, not in any way whatsoever. But you don't want to ignore your freedom. And the thing is, freedom often sits in us quietly. And the pain, the sorrow, the heartache of the illness is a little bit louder. It's easier to focus on that heartache because we feel it in our bodies viscerally when we don't really feel our freedom that way. You and I, we're both sitting in a room and we're perfectly safe. I'm safe sitting in this room. You're safe sitting in this room, but you don't feel the safety. You don't feel like, wow, I feel really safe. You don't feel it, but you are that.
That's
And
correct.
so it's kind of like that's part of the white swirl of like paying attention. And that's a part of the narrative of your life. That's a part of your existence of the here and now. And it's always the pendulum swinging back and forth between what is it that you can and what is it that you cannot control.
Um, yeah, I think that weaves well into what I want to talk about next. Because for me, Um, I at in SwagAbility, we base our whole premise of helping people, is first and foremost attached to my faith, my relationship
True.
with God, my dogged determination to be a Christ follower, understanding of the Bible. What role does faith play for you, if I may ask that, and the importance you feel, of it for people, for it to be enough for people to really, uh, pay attention to in their lives?
I think faith is extremely important, and I've always seen people throughout my treatment of people that those with greater faith tend to be the most resilient. It's not a complete, binary choice there. It's kind of like, but they tend to have more community. They tend to kind of have more purpose and meaning in their life. And again, I don't speak in terms of absolutes, whatsoever, but it's kind of like you have people like Rick Warren in his book, The Purpose Driven Life, which, comes down to service of others. We are here to serve others. And, is that a fun, now you don't have to have faith to be kind of believe that, whatsoever, but, there are a lot of people with faith that do, and then they think about that, and it's like the lens of how they kind of see the world and, why they are here, and they are kind of serving it, from a particular, vantage point based on their own beliefs and their own faith. Um I've always seen it as, like myself as like that good Samaritan. It's like I'm scarred, I'm ugly, I'm, beat up. I don't have the pretty robes and I'm not someone who's perfect walking this earth. But if I see someone suffering, regardless of who they are, I try to pick them up and I try to be able to assist them, any way that I possibly can. And so,
Think for, uh, or anyone listening, or audience listening, I do think you're right. It doesn't faith doesn't it's not just people of faith that have this desire to help others, but I I think for me as a C5 quad that's never going to not have health issues the rest of my life. The reason I throw my feet over the edge of the bed every morning to get up is because I have found not just productivity, to be healthy, but whatever platform I have, whether it's just the ability to blink my eyes or breathe, um, I find it that I impact people
sure.
without choices in a negative or positive way. But I am at
Mhm.
my best, even when I'm feeling the crappiest, when I'm investing in someone else's life to say, look, I get it at this level. Losing a child, I can speak into that because I have. And when I can tell someone else, I don't know your hurt right now, but
Yes.
I do know for us, here's the hope we had, and here's what it looked
Yes.
like. And when I'm doing that, um, I don't work, and it's just who I am. And so, regardless of faith or not, I think that's ingrained within every person.
Yes.
I just think we lose that sense of really drilling down on it when we ourselves don't feel well. And I
Yes.
think that that's normal. I don't feel well all the time, but I know I feel better even when I feel not well. I feel better when I'm at least doing something, and it's
Yes.
even better when it's for someone. Is that a common finding in your
Yeah,
work or part of
again,
the
it goes
team?
back to Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, which is the people are going to survive the concentration camps are going to be the individuals that have meaning in their life, that believe in something, greater than themselves. And, humans can do extraordinary things when they believe in something. And it can help us get through the dark nights of the soul. I also find that it's important to have a relationship with the word forgiveness, We are all imperfect people. I am an imperfect person, and I have an imperfect body. I'm an perfect soul. You know, lots of imperfections, or around. But it's like, you know, forgiveness, and having somebody to ask forgiveness from, I think, matters tremendously,
Very free.
because we have to be able to forgive our bodies. We have to be able to forgive our imperfections, and we have to be able to, you know, put it somewhere. And, forgiveness, again, I always kind of go vacillate kind of like back and forth in terms of having the most, like the big tent kind of approach that everyone gets to play along here. It's like forgiveness is not just, a Christian, skill set, or value, but it is reinforced, talked about, and there's a fundamentally different relationship with, the practice of forgiveness kind of within that context.
And that's rich what you just said there. I mean, we know what unforgiveness does to the soul and to the body when you know you've wronged, but until you get that off your chest and do that. So I think forgiveness works in so many other areas in
Yes.
our life that I've never thought of it like that before.
Resentment and anger will eat you alive.
Yes. Yeah,
When
it's
you're out for revenge,
the
bring
art.
2 shovels. You'll
That's
bury yourself in somebody else.
that's yeah. This is why I love podcasting and meeting people, because they just bring new attention to life in ways that we all don't. And if it works for podcasters, right? It's it's a certainty for mankind, if they connect with their fellow brother or sister over whatever topic that might be. You're
Yes.
dealing with something in your life. You're an expert on something. You're passionate about something. And so, I just throw that out there to people listening. You don't have to start a podcast to meet people, but it's been one of the most enriching things in my life to sit across a computer screen and listen to things that people have said that they've dealt with and paint it in a light you've never seen it before. Um, what about people who don't live with chronic pain? What do they what do you think they fail to understand about it or about that person? Speak to the one today that's like, I can't relate to anything, or maybe not anything, but I can't relate to majority of what they're talking about. Talk to them for a minute about the person they're either living with, the friend that they're like, I can't hang out with them because he's always this way. What would you say to that person that doesn't deal with what might be coming for them down the road, but certainly is involved
Sure.
with
I
them?
was going to mention that, but I always like the quote, "Health is a crown that only the ill can see."
Yeah.
And so you don't really appreciate your blessings. Just kind of like we didn't appreciate, how easy childhood could be for lots of people,
Yes.
not having to pay taxes, not having to work, I just had to learn things and go play in the playground. But, like that was too tedious. And it's kind of like, oh, that was a crown. It's like the whole youth is wasted on the young kind of approach. Um, and so it's kind of, I would say it's like, look at the lives of the people who are ill. Look at that and see, does that make you think of any particular blessings that you have within your own life? Because we take things for granted. If you live long enough, you will be ill. There's no question about it. People, everyone who doesn't have a disability, it's just pre-disabled. You will lose your eyesight, lose the ability to walk. It's like you live long enough, everything will be taken from you on a physical basis, and you'll become very frail and weak. You'll develop cancer that, X, Y, and Z. You possess it for now, but it's kind of like, and I've
Mhm.
had my grandfather lived to 102 and he was blind. He couldn't walk. It's kind of like everyone is just pre disabled. So, Are you aware that you are pre-disabled? And are you aware of how you are not disabled? And those are your freedoms, those are your strengths, and that do you treasure them? And do you use that in any capacity that's meaningful to yourself or somebody else?
I think it was rather I'm trying to think it was the writer of Hebrews or Ecclesiastes, or it could be something Solomon said. Was talking about remember your creator in the days of
Yes.
your youth before the windows darken. It was such good biblical analogies to, your hearing goes, your eyesight goes, your teeth, the grinders don't work. But
Yes.
it is. I think it's such an important thing is like win today. Win the day you're in right now because you're
Yes.
not guaranteed of tomorrow. And take care of the yesterday that might be holding you back. I think that's probably the best advice we could give one another. I didn't even realize we were close to an hour in chatting, but I did wanna I'll let you speak there onto that, but then I also want you to talk about, uh, some of the you started into poetry, into writing. I wanna, before we close, turn attention to some of the books you've written, how people can find you on social media and things like that, and give that opportunity, but, I know you were gonna say something there, so
Well, I think I lost it, so it's
oh,
okay.
I'm so sorry. Cut that
No,
off.
no, no, no,
I
no,
just
we're
looked,
we're
I'm like,
fine.
"You're at an hour, this is awesome." It's gone by so quickly, and I always say to people when I get to an hour, that means where there has to be a 2.0, in the months ahead where we're
Okay, never a
because
problem. Just reach out to me.
absolutely. Um, but yeah, let's bring it kind of full circle back to, your experiences,
Mhm.
with this. You sat on the other side of the desk. You've sat on both sides
Yes.
now, and, because of this, it led you to writing,
Yes.
a number of books. I know you didn't give yourself any accolades at the beginning, and I didn't read the full list.
Well, you don't need to. I'm
You
just
would
some
want
dude.
to, but I want you to say, uh, give my listeners the opportunity to know what some of the things you have written and purpose you wrote them for. And if you're open for it, how can someone connect with you if they're looking just to talk and learn
Yes.
what your services are? So let's start with
Yes.
books.
And, so I started writing poetry as just this cathartic expression of looking for something that I could control that would be meaningful to me. I can't paint. I'm not a sculptor. There's lots of things that I can't do. But I started with poetry because poetry doesn't really have much in the way of rules. And it's kind of like a chaotic mess. I wouldn't tell anyone to read my poetry, but it was just me being curious of, I wonder if I could and again, in that wonderment, that curiosity, and just led me to create things. So I wrote 2 books in poetry. I wrote chronic illness journals. I put together coloring books, and there's some kind of books on modern burnout within living with a medical illness. All kinds of different ways to approach dealing with the suffering in various ways of living with a chronic illness. And it's not an easy path, it's not an easy journey, but whatever you're doing, you should bring forth curiosity of what the day is and how it can unfold. And that's how I ended up doing, my own individual podcasts, which are all solo episodes, where I talk about, and the podcast is called To the Bone: Conversations on Pain, Illness, and Meaning. And then I was just like, you know what, this is interesting. And I don't really want to interview people. That's not really what I want to do, but it would be really kind of interesting to be on other people's podcasts. So I signed up with a service called Podmatch,
Great.
and that's how I became a guest on other people's podcasts and talking to people all over the world and all kinds of people, all kinds of circumstances, and it's just interesting. It's fascinating. It's this fun little thing that I get to do, which is start off with this curiosity. And here I am in this conversation with you that I would not otherwise know you as a person on this earth if I didn't have that curiosity. And so it's just been like a fun way to be able to spend an hour to get to know somebody else and to get to live life here. And uh, so it's always been that curiosity. I don't have all the answers. I'll never pretend to have all the answers. I am not some guru sitting on the top of some mountain. But, I help people with medical burnout, the medical being stressed, living in a difficult situation that you cannot control on a medical basis, an illness, whatever it may be. I don't have cures. I wish I did. It's kind of like, don't have cures, but it is the editing of the story to be able to make it fit better than it fits right now. And, if someone wants to reach out, chronic illness coach, mentor, they can go to drbone.live. That's DRBONE.live. And that's the easiest way to connect with me and find me.
We'll keep all those in the show notes as well. I'll link to your books. I'm assuming they're available
It's
on
on my
Amazon
website, and
and on
then
the
that goes
website.
directly to Amazon.
Great. So we can get to there because they are for any age, like you said, coloring
Yes.
books to whatever.
Yeah.
So I would highly
It's all
say
over the
check
place.
out Dr. Jeff's stuff. He's a true gentleman. He's authentic, which I think is what the world needs is people who are authentic. That's what you'll find in Dr. Jeff. Uh, Last question before we ride out of here. What does right now we're all just walking each other home to mean
Yes.
today?
That we are here for others. It's like if you're having a tough time with grief, the best way to cope with grief is to go help someone who's coping with grief. If and that's what I do. It's like I cope with illness, so I want to help people who are also dealing with illness themselves. And so we focus and we worship too much that sense of I. What do I need? What do I? And how am I going to get through this? And it's it's of course that's always going to be a component, but we need to incorporate more we, and we need to incorporate more community and a greater sense of the awareness of others and how we can serve others.
Yeah, that's a wonderful way to end what I feel has been a very profitable conversation from me. And I pray for those that are driving, listening it, or to those that are getting it on our YouTube that it's very profitable for them as well. Thank you for your time, Dr. Jeff. I look forward to 2.0 down the road.
Absolutely. And thank you very much for having me today.
But yes, and in the future again, friends. If this podcast has meant anything to you, or perhaps it you know a loved one, or everyone knows somebody that could be down and out at this time, you would do my wife and I the greatest honor by sharing this podcast with someone else, or even more so, it means more than a donation. Uh, would you subscribe to our YouTube channel or whatever podcast format you're listening on? Would you follow us so you'll know when the next one drops? And if you actually have the time, head to our Apple or Spotify account, leave a comment on there. I'd love to know where you're listening from and what some of the topics you'd like to hear us speak on in the coming days. But remember, friends, your story has power and your life has plenty of purpose. So stay faithful, keep moving forward, remember others, and thrive wherever life finds you. Swags out.